Welcome to this edition of AFMC.
I'll tell you how I got better. I'm
Glad to be here.
But a mission to
Delivery of. Well, I think that we're going to talk about everybody's.
Arkansas is the second highest prescriber.
Welcome to AFMC TV. I'm Robin Ledbetter. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Dr. Chad Rodgers, and he is the Chief Medical Officer for AFMC and a pediatrician.
Yes.
Dr. Rodgers, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me back.
So we're talking about something positive.
Yeah.
At least for a minute.
Like
yes.
the positive,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
It's always better than the negative.
Absolutely. So let's tell me what positive childhood experiences are. We know that they're positive, but why are they important?
Yeah, they're very important. You know, in the last couple of years, we've talked a lot about adverse childhood experiences, which are those things that happen to children that we relate to as trauma, you know, whether they're just abuse or things that are happening in their life. But we didn't really spend enough time talking about the positive childhood experiences, which are really those experiences in which children feel safe and nurtured with, you know, adults and relationships in their life where they feel safe and nurtured, where those are the things that sort of counter all those adverse childhood experiences. So we sort of think about all those adverse childhood experiences kind of balance and kind of make things difficult. The positive are kind of what lean you back, and that's what brings you towards what we call resilience, which is your ability to respond to stress. So these are really important. We kind of think about most of the positive childhood experiences are studied. There's about 7 of them, but they generally tend to be around having safe and nurturing relationships with adults, feeling like you belong to your family, feeling like you belong to your community, feeling like you're safe, that if you're upset or sad or having difficulty, that you have a place to go. So these are really important elements to help our children develop the skills they need to respond to stress. And so there's really good evidence to show that if sort of the positive outweighs the good, which is what we all like to hear. And so that's why they become so important and why we really need to talk about them. And we really need to probably measure them more, because when we're evaluating a family or, you know, a situation and we've looked at those traumatic experiences, what we need to know is what do we have, what are the skills that we have to overcome, what are the good things. And so those are really so important and crucial for people to kind of balance that out.
So how does a parent protect their child from trauma?
Yeah, it's really hard. You know, things just are going to happen in life. I mean, bad things happen to good people. That's like always the same. But, you know, that's just sort of an element of life. And so I think a lot of times when, you know, bad things happen, they're also happening to the entire family. It's not just the child, it's also the adults and the grandparents and so on. But we have to think about how we're responding to that, and we have to model and show children how to appropriately respond so that they grow up with the skills that they have. But so you can't just prevent trauma, but you got to teach children how to get over things. So sometimes it's the little things first, right? And then you build to the bigger things, to like you know, if you have someone die in the family or something like that. Not that parents can't go through that process themselves. They just need to be conscious about how they're doing that for their kids.
And parental divorce and separation are common, and sometimes in some households they're just chaotic.
Yeah.
And so with things like caregiver mental illness and drug use, how do we counter things like that?
Yeah. One thing we have to keep in mind is that children love their parents no matter how bad they are. And even when parents get divorced, and, you know, it's just so hard when you pit one parent against the other. And maybe certainly one parent is having difficulty, or maybe they are struggling with substance abuse or mental illness, and you can't really, you know, again, things are going to happen, but, you know, kind of thinking about how we are doing as adults and how we're showing our kids how we're doing that. And like, adults need to be adults, and we need to take into the fact that sometimes we may really hate our ex-partner or ex-spouse, but the kids love that. And so by you know, putting that person in a negative light in front of them really affects how they feel. And then thinking about the kind of long-term effects. I mean, you're always going to be together. You have children together. How to be kind of supportive. And sometimes it's a matter of just maybe those supportive adults. There needs to be another set of supportive adults. This is where grandparents are so important. Aunts and uncles, the people in your community, those that your school teacher, that when the parents are kind of going through a hard time, those are the people who help sustain the kid and get them through those very hard times. So they're going to happen. I think, but most children want to be with their parents, and by separating children from their parents, we're removing a person in their life that they really love. We do want to cultivate those safe, nurturing relationships, and we want children to be safe. So that if they're in danger, yes, we need to do that. But most of the times, just because, dad's a deadbeat or mother has, some mental health problems, doesn't mean that they, can't be a good parent.
And we've learned a lot about trauma over the last several years. What are some things we can do in education?
Yeah, I think, when we're doing all this work around trauma, the education area, the school teachers, the early child care people who take care of children, really are the people who are so interested in all this information because they see it every day. And that they are aware that the kids are going through this because many of them have gone through it themselves growing up, but they don't have the skills that they need. And so there's some really specific, trauma-informed ways, we say trauma-informed strategies that teachers and other people who are working in the classroom can use with children who have experienced trauma that prevent further trauma. So those are really helpful things, but those are things that have to be learned. And they're really things that up to this point haven't been well taught. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in the community and in Arkansas for getting more knowledge about how to do that. And a lot of it is about self-regulation yourself, so addressing your own trauma. So there's lots of kind of exciting opportunities to do that.
Like, what would be something an educator would need to know?
Yeah, I think sometimes when many situations in schools, when the child is getting escalated, the teacher often gets escalated, and then the child gets escalated, and then other people come into the room and it gets escalated. It just keeps doing this. What we really need is to start here, and for the teacher to recognize that they're getting escalated, bring themselves down, help bring that child down with some really practical skills. Maybe sometimes just taking them to a safe place, lowering their voice and not yelling. Those are all really good skills to have to help de-escalate a problem.
What are some things we can do in healthcare?
Yeah, there's a lot we could do in healthcare. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody who didn't go into an emergency room or a hospital or a clinic and have some sort of traumatic experience or something that sort of triggered them. So we still have a whole lot to learn in healthcare. So just like there's trauma-informed strategies in the classroom, there are things that we could be doing in healthcare to kind of just help people not feel triggered that they should be in an environment where they're going to get, a treatment where they feel safe and where they can talk to their providers about things. And that comes from the person at the front desk just trying to put some of their situation. They may have had a hard morning getting into work, but that's not that person's problem, and they need to be welcoming when they come in the door, to things that we put on our forms and the questions that we ask. And I know as a physician, I have asked people questions sometimes that are very blunt that probably could have been done better. So kind of, thinking about things that we can do when we communicate with patients.
And in our communities too, what are you seeing that should be done there?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I think, what you see so much in, going on in our culture is some disconnectedness, and that people are very opposed, and people want to argue, and people have very strong ideologies. And like you used to joke about talking about religion or politics, but it's really not a joke anymore. You can really ruin relationships. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do around our communication and learning how to be civil with each other. And some of that has to do with just recognizing that I feel how you feel. I feel how I feel. You feel how you feel. I understand how you feel. We're going to have a conversation. We're not going to argue about this. But I think those are things that we also model to our children. And we don't see that on the TV, and we don't see that on social media. And so this is a new kind of way of thinking that kind of helps reduce, because I think when people often get so angry and so reactive, that goes to a place of trauma as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities that we can learn just to communicate better and be more respectful of each other, even when we differ in opinions.
Are there some things that we can do to create our own positive experiences and heal?
Yeah, I think, it all goes back to our our own emotional regulation. So, it's sort of taking care of ourselves. So making sure that we feel safe and that we feel nurtured, that we have nurturing relationships in our life, that we're getting enough sleep, that we're staying healthy, that we're exercising, that we're eating well, that we're taking out times to do things for ourselves, especially for those people who are in those real high level care positions, educators, healthcare providers, moms, like really taking that time and making a priority to do things like meditation and yoga or take that walk or read that book. So I think there's a whole lot that we can do for ourselves that we can learn to just make us, put us in a better place so that we're in a place that we can take care of others.
So tell me about the upcoming summit this year. You'll be talking about all of these things.
We'll be talking
there.
about all these
Yeah.
things. Yes, so we're very excited about our upcoming summit. This is our 8th annual summit. We're going to be having it at the Benton Convention Center. We have a great lineup of some really dynamic speakers, many of that are going to be addressing a lot of these issues. We're going to have some breakout sessions that help us in the classroom and in the healthcare setting and in our communities and with our neighbors and friends. And then we're going to kind of focus on some of those things that we can do to care for ourselves, as well as sort of have a community celebration. Because I think connectedness is so important to all of this. And I think it's so nice to bring people together. And so that's really the goal of the summit, to focus more on what we can do. How can we, how can we communicate better with each other? How can we communicate better with our children? What we do that create these positive childhood experiences that lead to flourishing? And so flourishing is really that state of just good wellness. So that's sort of our goal. And, it's always baby steps, but we're working in that direction.
And healthcare providers, community partners, who can attend?
Educators, community leaders, definitely educators, early childhood care providers, even parents and foster parents is a big group, because I think there's going to be a lot about things that we can do with our kids to kind of create those positive childhood experiences. It's really a conference that's for everybody, though.
Well, thank you for talking about positive childhood experiences and how that relates to all of us in so many ways. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's it for this episode of AFMC TV. Thanks for watching and have a great day.